Glucose versus sugar substitutes. Glucose, structure and metabolism, metabolic pathways, sugar substitutes classification, pathophysiology of chronic hyperglycemia, sweeteners and gut microbiota interaction, artificial sweeteners, natural non-low-caloric sweeteners, sugar alcohols, polyols. Recommendations for SIBO, IBS, diabetes, NAFLD, FODMAP, fructose, recent systematic reviews on artificial sweeteners, metabolic outcomes, inflammation, how to measure glucose at home, glucose curves, common types of sugar, liquid sweeteners like agave syrup, brown rice syrup, honey, maple syrup, and molasses. Dietary sugars, particularly glucose, are crucial in nutrition and have significant implications for chronic diseases. While glucose serves as the primary energy source for human cells, its excessive consumption is linked to various health issues globally. Sugar substitutes have been introduced as alternatives, but their long-term health impacts are still under research. Glucose, a monosaccharide with the chemical formula C6H12O6, is primarily absorbed in the small intestine through the sodium glucose cotransporter 1, SGLT1, which utilizes a sodium gradient for secondary active transport. Once inside the enterocyte, glucose exits into the bloodstream via GLUT2 transporters. The metabolism of glucose involves several pathways. After dietary carbohydrates are converted to glucose, it enters the bloodstream, prompting insulin release, which facilitates cellular uptake. Excess glucose can be stored as glycogen in the liver and muscles, or converted to fat through lipogenesis. The physiological regulation of blood glucose levels is tightly controlled by insulin, which lowers blood glucose, and glucagon, which raises it, highlighting the importance of maintaining homeostasis in glucose metabolism. Sugar substitutes classification, artificial sweeteners, asulfame potassium, ACE-K, advantame, aspartame, neotame, saccharine, sucralose, natural non-low-caloric sweeteners, stevia, ribaldoside A, Reb A, active compound from stevia, monk fruit, lo han guo, brazane, thaumatin, allulose, rare sugar, naturally occurring, trehalose, natural disaccharide, sugar alcohols, polyols, erythritol, xylitol, sorbitol, maltitol, mannitol, lactitol. Best studied, most reliable evidence, aspartame, sucralose, reasonably safe, less data. Stevia, asulfame K, neotame, advantame, use with awareness. Sugar alcohols, GI effects, mixed data. Least studied emerging, allulose, monk fruit, brazane, thaumatin. The mechanisms of action for glucose and sugar substitutes reveal distinct pathways and health implications. Glucose is rapidly absorbed, stimulates insulin secretion, and directly enters metabolic pathways, leading to immediate energy production and increased blood glucose levels. However, chronic excess intake of glucose can result in a cascade of health issues, including chronic hyperglycemia, hyperinsulinemia, and insulin resistance, which are significant risk factors for type 2 diabetes, obesity, and cardiovascular disease. In contrast, sugar substitutes activate sweet taste receptors T1R2, T1R3, but contribute limited or no calories with variable absorption and metabolism. While they may offer a lower calorie alternative, their long-term health effects require further investigation. Additionally, chronic high sugar intake is associated with the formation of advanced glycation end products, AGEs, oxidative stress, and inflammation, all of which contribute to the pathophysiology of chronic hyperglycemia and its related health complications. Understanding these mechanisms is crucial for developing effective dietary strategies to mitigate the risks associated with high sugar consumption. The health effects of sugar substitutes encompass a range of benefits and risks, particularly concerning metabolic and gastrointestinal impacts. Notable benefits are the potential for sugar substitutes to aid in reducing caloric intake, minimal glycemic response, lower risk of dental caries. However, their metabolic effects can be complex. Research indicates that these substitutes may alter insulin responses and contribute to appetite dysregulation, raising concerns about their long-term efficacy in weight management. Cardiovascular risks associated with sugar substitutes are still under investigation, with some studies suggesting an increased risk, though the evidence remains inconclusive. Additionally, gastrointestinal effects are significant, as sugar alcohols can lead to bloating and diarrhea. The influence of sugar substitutes on the gut microbiome is variable, depending on the specific compound, dosage, and individual responses. Certain non-nutritive sweeteners, particularly artificial ones, have been shown to disrupt the balance of gut bacteria, leading to a decrease in beneficial species such as bifidobacteria and lactobacillus, while promoting species linked to metabolic dysfunction, a condition referred to as dysbiosis. This alteration in microbial composition can affect the production of metabolites like short-chain fatty acids, SCFAs, which play crucial roles in regulating glucose metabolism, inflammation, and gut barrier integrity. Furthermore, some studies suggest that changes in the microbiome due to sugar substitutes may impair glucose tolerance through microbiome-driven alterations in insulin sensitivity. This indicates that sugar substitutes could exert indirect metabolic effects, even in the absence of caloric intake. Overall, the interaction between sugar substitutes and gut microbiota highlights the need for further research to fully understand their implications for health and metabolism. The text outlines the differences between various types of sweeteners, highlighting their distinct effects on health and metabolism. Artificial sweeteners, such as aspartame and sucralose, are noted for their potential to alter microbiome composition, with effects that can vary significantly among individuals. In contrast, natural sweeteners like stevia tend to have milder effects, although their long-term impacts are still being researched. Sugar alcohols, including xylitol and erythritol, are partially fermented by gut bacteria, which can lead to increased gas production and gastrointestinal discomfort at high doses. A comparative clinical analysis reveals that glucose provides 4 kilocalories per g-gram of energy and has a high glycemic effect, resulting in a strong insulin response and being essential for bodily functions. In contrast, sugar substitutes offer low or no energy, have minimal glycemic effects, and elicit variable insulin responses, with their necessity being non-essential. The long-term risks associated with sugar substitutes are still emerging, unlike the well-established risks of glucose. Key insights emphasize that sugar substitutes are not biologically inert. They can alter gut microbiota composition and change metabolic signaling. The effects of these sweeteners depend on the type used, the dosage, and the individual's microbiome, leading to the concept of personalized nutrition. Responses to sweeteners can vary widely, with some individuals experiencing significant changes in their microbiome, while others show minimal or no effects. Sweeteners and the gut microbiota. The interaction between sweeteners and the gut microbiota is a rapidly evolving field of research. As of April 2026, the scientific consensus distinguishes sharply between artificial sweeteners, AS, and natural low-calorie sweeteners, with the former showing more evidence of potential microbial disruption. The gut microbiota, the trillions of microorganisms in our digestive tract, plays a crucial role in metabolism and immunity. Recent studies indicate that while some sweeteners are microbiota neutral, others can alter the composition and function of these microbes, potentially leading to glucose intolerance. These synthetic compounds are often not fully absorbed in the small intestine, allowing them to reach the colon, where they interact directly with gut bacteria. Dysbiosis. High intake of saccharin and sucralose has been linked to a reduction in beneficial bacteria, like bifidobacterium, and an increase in strains associated. Research suggests these shifts in bacteria can alter how the body processes sugar, occasionally causing paradoxical blood sugar spikes in healthy individuals. Aspartame. Generally considered more neutral than saccharin because it is broken down into amino acids before reaching the large intestine, though some studies still investigate its long-term effects on microbial metabolites. Point 2. Natural sweeteners. Stevia, monk fruit. Stevia, often considered microbiota friendly, some studies suggest that steviosides may actually encourage the growth of certain beneficial microbes, though more human clinical trials are ongoing in 2026. Monk fruit currently shows little to no negative impact on gut diversity, making it a preferred choice for those focusing on gut health. 3. Sugar alcohols. Xylitol, erythritol, sorbitol. Laxative effects. In high doses, these can cause osmotic diarrhea, which physically flushes the gut and can temporarily disrupt the microbial balance. Erythritol, notably absorbed in the small intestine and excreted via urine, meaning very little reaches the gut bacteria, making it one of the most stable gut-neutral options. No points and implications. Personalized response. Not everyone reacts the same way. The impact of sweeteners depends heavily on an individual's baseline microbiota, the specific fingerprint of bacteria they already have. Some artificial sweeteners may weaken the intestinal barrier, potentially allowing bacterial byproducts to enter the bloodstream and trigger low-grade inflammation. While used to reduce calories, if a sweetener disrupts the microbiota, it may interfere with the hormones that signal fullness, satiety, leading to increased appetite over time. When managing conditions like diabetes or SIBO, it is advisable to choose sweeteners that are absorbed early in the digestive tract, such as erythritol or natural options like stevia. This approach helps to reduce the interaction with colonic bacteria, which can exacerbate symptoms. The absorption site and fermentation risk of various sweeteners vary significantly. Glucose is absorbed in the proximal small intestine and poses a low fermentation risk if not malabsorbed, making it a preferred fuel for bacteria. Erythritol, also absorbed in the proximal small intestine, has a low fermentation risk and is considered the best sugar alcohol for SIBO compatibility. In contrast, stevia is not absorbed and has a moderate fermentation risk, while fructose presents a high fermentation risk and should be strongly avoided. SIBO and IBS exhibit similar symptoms, including bloating, pain, and changes in bowel habits, but they differ in their underlying causes. SIBO is characterized by an overgrowth of bacteria in the small intestine, while IBS is classified as a functional gut-brain disorder. Diagnosis of SIBO is typically conducted through breath tests, whereas IBS is diagnosed through exclusion of other conditions. Notably, research indicates that up to 78% of individuals diagnosed with IBS may actually have SIBO as the underlying cause of their symptoms. SIBO, or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, occurs when bacteria from the large intestine migrate into the small intestine, leading to premature fermentation of food. This condition is characterized by symptoms such as intense bloating, abdominal pain, particularly in the upper abdomen, fatigue, joint pain, and weight loss. Diagnosis is typically achieved through hydrogen or methane breath tests, while treatment options include antibiotics like rifaximin or herbal antimicrobials, often used in conjunction with prokinetics to enhance gut motility. In contrast, irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, is classified as a functional disorder, often linked to nerve sensitivity, gut-brain dysfunction, or impaired gut cleaning waves. Symptoms of IBS include chronic abdominal pain and bloating, with variations in bowel habits manifesting as diarrhea, IBSD, constipation, IBSC, or alternating patterns. Diagnosis relies on symptom-based criteria outlined in the Rome-4 guidelines, which also necessitate the exclusion of other diseases. Management strategies for IBS typically involve lifestyle modifications, stress management, dietary changes such as the low FODMAP diet, and medications aimed at regulating bowel habits. For individuals managing SIBO, it is crucial to select sweeteners that are absorbed early in the digestive tract, specifically in the proximal small intestine. This approach minimizes the risk of these sweeteners reaching the overgrown bacteria in the distal small intestine or colon, where they could be fermented into gas, exacerbating symptoms. The comparison of 4 sweeteners regarding their potential for colonic interaction and provocation of SIBO symptoms reveals distinct characteristics and glucose, or dextrose, is identified as the gold standard for SIBO-safe sweeteners due to its rapid absorption in the small intestine, resulting in virtually no glucose reaching the colon. This makes it the safest choice, providing immediate energy without leaving fermentable material for bacteria. Erythritol, a sugar alcohol, is noted for its unique behavior compared to other polyols. Approximately 90% of erythritol is absorbed in the small intestine and excreted unchanged, with only about 10% reaching the colon. Research indicates that most gut bacteria cannot ferment erythritol, making it highly compatible and the only low FODMAP sugar alcohol recommended for SIBO patients. Stevia, derived from the Stevia rebaudiana plant, contains steviol glycosides that are not absorbed in the small intestine. Instead, they reach the colon where they are broken down by specific bacteria. While stevia does interact with colonic bacteria, it typically does not cause rapid fermentation. However, it is essential to choose pure stevia, as many commercial brands may contain high fermentation additives, leading to moderate compatibility. Fructose is highlighted as a problematic sweetener for SIBO, being a primary trigger in the FODMAP diet. Its limited absorption capacity can lead to saturation of transporters, resulting in unabsorbed fructose reaching the colon and causing rapid fermentation, gas, and osmotic diarrhea. Therefore, it is advised to avoid fructose, as it significantly exacerbates SIBO symptoms. FODMAP, which stands for fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols, identifies specific carbohydrates that can trigger digestive issues, particularly in individuals with conditions like SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. High FODMAP foods to avoid include certain vegetables such as garlic, onions, and mushrooms. Fruits, like apples, cherries, and pears. Dairy products, including cow's milk and yogurt. Grains and legumes, such as wheat and beans. And sweeteners like honey and high fructose corn syrup. Conversely, low FODMAP foods that are generally safe to consume include proteins such as chicken, beef, and tofu. Vegetables like carrots and spinach. Fruits such as unripe bananas and blueberries, grains like rice and quinoa, and dairy alternatives including lactose-free milk and almond milk. Fruits are a significant source of fructose, with apples and pears being particularly high and often triggering SIBO symptoms. Other high fructose fruits include stone fruits like cherries and peaches, tropical fruits such as mangoes, and dried fruits like raisins and figs. Natural sweeteners like agave nectar and honey also contain high levels of fructose, often exceeding that of high fructose corn syrup. Processed ingredients, including high fructose corn syrup and crystalline fructose, are commonly found in packaged foods, contributing to hidden fructose intake. Certain vegetables, while less common, can also contain fructose or fructans that may cause digestive issues. Notable examples include asparagus, artichokes, and onions, which contain fructans that are not digestible by the human body and can lead to fermentation by gut bacteria, resulting in gas and discomfort for sensitive individuals. The comparison between fructose and glucose highlights significant differences in their profiles and associated risks for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, SIBO. Foods such as agave and honey contain high levels of fructose, with agave having an extremely high fructose content of approximately 85%, leading to a very high SIBO risk. Apples and honey also present high risks due to their fructose content. In contrast, table sugar, which consists of equal parts fructose and glucose, poses a moderate risk, while strawberries, with a balanced low total sugar profile, are associated with a low SIBO risk. For individuals concerned about SIBO, it is advisable to focus on glucose or pure erythritol, as these sweeteners are absorbed quickly and do not contribute to bacterial overgrowth. The glucose trick suggests that consuming fructose alongside an equal or greater amount of glucose can enhance fructose absorption, making table sugar more tolerable than foods with excess fructose, such as agave or apples. Caution is warranted when selecting sweeteners, particularly those labeled as keto or natural, as they may contain inulin or fructooligosaccharides, which are highly fermentable prebiotics that can exacerbate SIBO symptoms. During a flare-up, it is generally safer to use glucose-based sweeteners or simple table sugar in moderation rather than high-intensity natural sweeteners that may include problematic fillers. Recent systematic reviews on artificial sweeteners have highlighted their complex effects on the gut microbiome. A key review titled Artificial Sweeteners, a Double-Edged Sword for Gut Microbiome indicates that while artificial sweeteners can alter gut microbiota composition, the results are inconsistent across studies. Common patterns observed, particularly in animal studies, include a decrease in beneficial bacteria such as bifidobacterium and lactobacillus, alongside an increase in potentially harmful bacteria like Clostridium and E. coli. These changes may lead to dysbiosis, increased inflammation, and altered metabolic signaling. However, the evidence suggests biological effects without consistent clinical harm. Supporting systematic and mechanistic reviews further elaborate on the interactions between non-nutritive sweeteners and gut microbiota. They emphasize direct interactions with gut bacteria, changes in gene expression, and microbial metabolism, noting that effects can vary significantly depending on the specific type of sweetener rather than being uniform across all artificial sweeteners. Additionally, a broader review on artificial sweeteners and rare sugars raises concerns about microbiome disruption with increased consumption, underscoring the heterogeneity of outcomes observed in the research. Meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials examining the metabolic outcomes associated with artificially sweetened beverages. The main findings indicate that there are no significant differences in body weight, HbA1c levels, lipids, or blood pressure when comparing individuals consuming artificially sweetened beverages to those consuming unsweetened beverages. This suggests that artificially sweetened beverages may be metabolically neutral short-term. The systematic review of preclinical studies on inflammation indicates that while there are potential pro-inflammatory effects associated with artificial sweeteners, the evidence is highly variable and strongly dependent on factors such as the specific compound, aspartame, sucralose, or saccharin, the dosage, and the model used in the studies. Although signals of inflammation exist, their clinical relevance remains uncertain. Cross-cutting themes across various reviews highlight that the effects of sweeteners are compound-specific, meaning that different sweeteners do not behave uniformly. Notably, saccharin, sucralose, and stevia exhibit distinct effects. A central mechanism identified in most reviews is the modulation of gut microbiota, which is linked to glucose tolerance, insulin sensitivity, and inflammation. However, the evidence regarding these outcomes is inconsistent. For instance, the strength of evidence for glycemic control is categorized as weak to neutral, while weight outcomes from randomized controlled trials are deemed neutral. Changes in the microbiome show moderate mechanistic evidence, but findings on inflammation remain inconclusive, and long-term clinical outcomes are insufficiently studied. Significant gap exists between human and animal data, with animal studies often showing stronger negative effects compared to the mostly neutral results observed in human trials. This discrepancy poses a major limitation in the field of research on artificial sweeteners. Key limitations emphasized in recent systematic reviews include the short duration of RCTs, small sample sizes, heterogeneous exposure to different sweeteners, and a lack of long-term outcome data. From the synthesis of these systematic reviews, it can be concluded that artificial sweeteners do not significantly worsen metabolic markers in short-term RCTs and can alter the gut microbiome. However, the long-term cardiometabolic risks and the clinical significance of microbiome changes remain uncertain. Importantly, the blanket claim that all artificial sweeteners are harmful is not supported by the evidence. To measure glucose at home, the standard method involves using a fingerstick glucometer, which requires a glucometer, specific test strips, and a lancet device for pricking the finger. The process begins with washing hands to avoid contamination from food residues that could lead to falsely high readings. After pricking the finger and applying a drop of blood to the test strip, the meter provides a result in approximately 5 seconds, measuring capillary blood glucose. The most effective times to measure glucose levels include fasting in the morning before eating, before meals, and 1 to 2 hours after meals. This practice helps create a glucose curve that reflects daily fluctuations in blood sugar levels. For equipment, the McKesson TrueMetrix blood glucose meter is highlighted as a reliable and budget-friendly option. It offers fast results, requires a small blood sample, can store around 500 readings, and is user-friendly with no coding needed. However, it is important to note that all home glucometers have an error margin of plus 10 to 15%, similar to lab tests. Users are advised not to fixate on individual readings but to focus on trends over time. For those seeking more accurate options, devices such as the Contour Next 1, AccuCheck Guide, and OneTouch Vario are recommended, although they tend to be more expensive, particularly regarding the cost of test strips. A healthy glucose curve is characterized by specific fasting and post-meal glucose levels. For non-diabetic individuals, fasting glucose should range from 70 to 99 milligrams per deciliter, with post-meal peaks occurring around 30 to 60 minutes after eating and returning to baseline within 2 to 3 hours. 2 hours after eating, glucose levels should be below 140 milligrams per deciliter. An ideal glucose curve shows a smooth rise after meals without sharp spikes and a quick return to baseline. Concerning patterns include fasting glucose levels exceeding 100 milligrams per deciliter, which may indicate prediabetes, and 2-hour post-meal levels above 140, suggesting impaired glucose tolerance. Large spikes over 180 milligrams per deciliter and a slow return to baseline are also red flags. For example, a healthy glucose pattern might show fasting at 85, post-meal at 120, and 2 hours later at 95 milligrams per deciliter, while a prediabetes pattern could show fasting at 105 milligrams per deciliter, post-meal at 160, and 2 hours later at 140 milligrams per deciliter. For accurate glucose measurement, the side of the fingertip is the best location for pricking, and it is recommended to use different fingers for each test. A comprehensive meal test should include measurements at 0, 30, 60, and 120 minutes. Currently, there is no practical home device for measuring insulin levels, as insulin testing requires larger blood samples and complex lab techniques. Insulin is present in low concentrations and fluctuates rapidly, making it challenging to develop a portable home device. Insulin is typically measured through lab tests, including fasting insulin and oral glucose tolerance tests, OGTT, which help assess insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome. Since direct insulin measurement is not feasible at home, glucose levels are used as a proxy. Devices like glucometers and continuous glucose monitors, CGMs, reflect the effects of insulin rather than measuring it directly. Clinically, it is possible to have normal glucose levels while experiencing high insulin levels, indicating early insulin resistance. Therefore, at-home glucose tracking and clinical assessments of fasting insulin, HbA1c, and possibly OGTT are recommended for monitoring metabolic health. Common types of sugar primarily consist of sucrose, a disaccharide made up of glucose and fructose, providing approximately 16-17 calories per teaspoon, with negligible protein, fat, or fiber. The main distinctions among these sugars arise from their processing levels and the amount of molasses retained, which contains trace minerals, vitamins, and antioxidants. However, the nutritional benefits from less refined sugars are minimal and require large quantities for any significant impact. Refined white sugar or granulated sugar is fully processed from sugar cane or sugar beets, with molasses completely removed. It is composed of over 99.9% sucrose and is characterized by its pure white color and fine crystals. This type of sugar is associated with empty calories and can lead to rapid blood sugar spikes, with a glycemic index around 65. Excessive consumption is linked to various health risks, including weight gain, insulin resistance, inflammation, tooth decay, and an increased likelihood of heart disease and type 2 diabetes. Brown sugar, which can be light or dark, is typically refined white sugar with molasses added back in. Some traditional varieties are less refined. Darker brown sugars contain more molasses, contributing to a richer flavor and moisture content. Despite these differences, brown sugar's health impact is nearly identical to that of white sugar, with a similar glycemic index and calorie content. While it offers slightly more trace minerals and antioxidants due to the molasses, these amounts are insufficient to classify it as a healthier option. Cane sugar, or raw cane sugar, is derived from sugar cane and may undergo fewer refining steps than white sugar. Its nutritional profile is very similar to that of refined white sugar. Evaporated cane juice, also known as dehydrated cane juice or dried cane syrup, is produced by extracting and filtering sugar cane juice before evaporating it to form crystals. This type is less refined than white sugar and retains some molasses, giving it a natural color and flavor. Although it is marketed as less processed, its health impact remains close to that of white sugar, with only minimal differences in trace minerals and antioxidants. Claims of better nutrient retention are largely overstated, as the risks associated with added sugar consumption persist across all types. Yerba sugar. often referred to as raw sugar or sugar in the raw, is a partially refined sugar characterized by its larger golden brown crystals and mild caramel flavor. It retains a thin layer of molasses, which contributes to its slightly higher mineral content, including calcium and potassium, as well as antioxidants compared to white sugar. Despite these differences, experts assert that nutritionally, turbinado sugar is virtually equivalent to white sugar. It is best suited for topping baked goods, but does not offer significant health benefit. Demerara sugar shares similarities with turbinado sugar, featuring large, light brown crystals that originate from the early stages of crystallization. It has a mild toffee flavor and contains slightly less molasses than darker sugar varieties. Muscovado sugar, also known as Barbados sugar, is either minimally refined or unrefined, with molasses retained or only partially removed. This results in a very dark, sticky sugar with a strong molasses flavor, preserving more of the original components of the sugar cane. Other less refined sugar options, such as rapadura, panela, sucanat, and jaggery or whole cane sugar, are produced by boiling and evaporating sugar cane juice without separating the molasses. These sugars are darker, retain the most natural compounds, and offer a richer flavor profile. They are often categorized as non-centrifugal sugars, NCS. The text discusses the health impacts of various types of added sugars, emphasizing that all should be limited to less than 25-36 grams per Dalton Y for most adults, or less than 10% of total caloric intake. It highlights that the body processes sucrose similarly, regardless of minor differences in molasses content. Less refined sugars, such as muscovado, rapadura, and true raw cane sugar, offer a nutritional advantage as they retain more antioxidants, phenolics, and minerals compared to white or standard brown sugar. Some studies indicate these sugars may provide mild anti-inflammatory or antioxidant benefits, although these advantages are minor when compared to the health benefits derived from fruits, vegetables, or spices. The overall calorie and sugar content remains a significant concern. In terms of glycemic response, most sugars, including white, brown, turbinado, and cane sugars, have a medium glycemic index, GI, around 65. Some less refined sugars may have a slightly lower GI due to the presence of molasses, but the evidence is inconsistent and the differences are minimal in practical meal contexts. Fructose-heavy sugars are not relevant in this discussion, as the focus is primarily on sucrose. The text also notes that excessive consumption of any sugar type increases the risk of obesity, metabolic issues, and dental problems, with less refined sugars not significantly mitigating these risks. Ultimately, no sugar type can be considered healthy in large quantities, underscoring the principle that the dose determines toxicity. In terms of ranking by potential health benefits, the least processed whole cane sugars, such as rapadura, panela, muscovado, and jaggery, are considered the healthiest, followed by turbinado, demerara, and evaporated cane juice, which have a slight edge over standard brown sugar. Refined white sugar is deemed the least healthy due to its extensive processing. When selecting sugars for culinary purposes, prioritize taste and recipe compatibility over health expectations. For instance, turbinado sugar offers a crunchy texture, while muscovado provides a richer flavor. It is essential to recognize that all types of added sugars contribute to your daily limit, so tracking intake through nutrition labels is advisable, specifically looking for the added sugars line. For healthier sweetness alternatives, consider whole fruits, which provide natural sugars along with fiber, or use smaller quantities of any sugar while focusing on nutrient-dense foods. Individuals with diabetes, blood sugar issues, or specific dietary goals should seek guidance from a healthcare professional, as responses to sugar can vary significantly among individuals. Ultimately, less refined sugars do not offer substantial health benefits in typical consumption amounts. While they may be marginally better than white sugar in terms of flavor and trace nutrients, the most significant health improvement comes from reducing overall added sugar intake. Mindful consumption is encouraged to enjoy these sweeteners responsibly. Liquid sweeteners, such as agave syrup, brown rice syrup, honey, maple syrup, and molasses, are often viewed as healthier alternatives to refined sugar. However, It is crucial to recognize their health implications and the appropriate consumption levels. Despite offering trace nutrients, these sweeteners primarily serve as sources of added sugar and are high in calories. The body metabolizes these sugars similarly to refined sugar, breaking them down into glucose and fructose. Excessive consumption of these sweeteners can lead to significant health issues. They can cause rapid blood sugar spikes akin to those from table sugar, which may reduce cellular responsiveness to insulin over time, potentially resulting in insulin resistance and an increased risk of type 2 diabetes. Additionally, overconsumption can lead to fatty liver disease, as the liver converts excess sugar into fat, raising the risk of metabolic dysfunction-associated steatotic liver disease, MASLD, which can progress to liver cancer and failure. Furthermore, the fat released into the bloodstream can contribute to clogged arteries, elevating the risk of heart disease, heart attacks, and strokes. While some natural sweeteners like honey and pure maple syrup contain minimal antioxidants and prebiotics, their primary component remains sugar, with agave nectar providing even fewer. It is also important to note that all added sugars, including those perceived as natural, can promote inflammation when consumed in excess. Healthy doses. Health authorities recommend limiting added sugars. The American Heart Association suggests no more than 36 grams, 9 teaspoons per Dalton Y for men, and 25 grams, 6 teaspoons per Dalton Y for women. Unfortunately, the average American often consumes significantly more than this. The recommendations for sweeteners emphasize the importance of prioritizing whole fruits as the healthiest option for sweetening foods and beverages. Fresh or frozen fruits not only provide natural sugars, but also come with essential fiber, vitamins, and antioxidants, which help regulate digestion and mitigate harmful blood sugar spikes. When considering natural sweeteners like honey or maple syrup, it is crucial to use them in moderation and account for them within the daily added sugar limit. Consumers should be vigilant about product labels, as some commercial maple syrups may contain high fructose corn syrup, which should be avoided. High fructose corn syrup is particularly concerning due to its association with various metabolic issues, including insulin resistance, increased belly fat, and elevated triglyceride levels. Caution is also advised regarding artificial sweeteners. Although they provide sweetness without calories, they may trigger cravings for more sugary foods. Some artificial sweeteners, such as erythritol, have been linked to heightened risks of heart attack and stroke, and ongoing research is investigating their long-term health effects. In summary, regardless of whether sugars are natural or refined, moderation is key to maintaining overall health. The focus should be on reducing total sugar intake by choosing naturally sweet whole foods and being mindful of portion sizes for all added sweeteners. Walking after a meal offers significant benefits for metabolic health and overall well-being. Research indicates that even a brief walk can positively influence how the body processes nutrients. Key advantages include improved blood sugar management, as light activity aids muscles in utilizing glucose, thereby reducing post-meal blood sugar spikes. Additionally, walking stimulates gastrointestinal tract muscles, enhancing digestion and alleviating feelings of bloating. Regular post-meal walking also supports heart health by contributing to lower blood pressure and better cholesterol levels over time. Furthermore, a short walk can enhance mental clarity, helping to combat the post-lunch energy slump associated with rapid blood sugar drop. For optimal results, it is recommended to start walking within 30 to 60 minutes after eating, with a duration of 15 to 20 minutes being ideal. Although even 2 to 5 minutes can be beneficial, the intensity should be kept at a leisurely to moderate pace, as vigorous exercise immediately after meals may lead to indigestion. For individuals with type 2 diabetes or insulin resistance, taking a 10-minute walk after each meal may be more effective for managing blood sugar levels than a single longer workout. It is important to consider personal health conditions when incorporating post-meal walking into a routine. Those with severe GRD or acid reflux should opt for slow strolls to avoid triggering symptoms. Consistency is key. Establishing a habit of walking after meals, even if just once a day after the largest meal, is more beneficial than infrequent longer walks. The choice of sweetener can significantly influence health outcomes for individuals managing specific conditions, particularly concerning blood sugar levels, weight, and metabolic health. A comparison of various sweeteners reveals their glycemic index (GI) and suitability for different health scenarios. Glucose, a simple sugar with a GI of 100, is not recommended for diabetics due to its high impact on blood sugar, primarily serving as a rapid energy source or for treating hypoglycemia. Sucrose, or table sugar, has a moderate high GI of 65 and is prevalent in processed foods, contributing to weight gain and dental issues. Fructose, while having a low GI of 19, poses metabolic risks. Excessive consumption is associated with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, NAFLD, and increased uric acid levels. In contrast, natural alternatives like stevia, erythritol, and monk fruit offer beneficial properties. Stevia with a GI of 0 is ideal for diabetics as it has no calories or glycemic impact and is heat stable for cooking. Erythritol, also with a GI of 0, is suitable for ketogenic diets and weight loss, being low in calories and not causing insulin spikes, although it may lead to gastrointestinal discomfort in large amounts. Monk fruit, another natural alternative with a GI of 0, is recommended for general health due to its zero-calorie content and antioxidant properties, making it safe for most metabolic conditions. Honey, with a GI of 58, is noted for its antioxidant content and is beneficial for alleviating coughs and colds. However, it still raises blood sugar levels and should be used sparingly by those with diabetes. Overall, selecting the appropriate sweetener is crucial for managing health conditions effectively. The recommendations for sweeteners vary based on specific health conditions. For individuals with diabetes, type 1 and 2, stevia or monk fruit is advised due to their glycemic index of 0, which means they do not elevate blood glucose levels. In cases of fatty liver disease, NAFLD, glucose can be consumed in moderation, but high fructose should be avoided as it is processed solely by the liver and can lead to fat accumulation. For obesity and weight management, erythritol or allulose is recommended, as these sweeteners offer sweetness with nearly 0 calories, aiding in maintaining a caloric deficit. Individuals suffering from irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, should opt for stevia or table sugar, while avoiding sugar alcohols like xylitol, sorbitol, and erythritol, which may cause bloating and laxative effects. For those with hypertension, natural leaf stevia may be beneficial, as some studies indicate that steviosides could help lower blood pressure over time. It is important to note that while zero glycemic index sweeteners are preferable for blood sugar control, they may still trigger cravings for sweetness. A gradual reduction in the overall consumption of sweetened foods is recommended for better metabolic health. A critical warning is issued for individuals with hereditary fructose intolerance, HFI, who must strictly avoid fructose, sucrose, and sorbitol, as their bodies cannot metabolize these sugars, leading to severe organ damage. The recommendations for long-term sweetener use emphasize the importance of variety, health, and natural sources. Rotating sweeteners, such as alternating between stevia and monk fruit, is advised to prevent gut microbiome imbalances associated with the overuse of a single type. Prioritizing whole sources of sweetness, particularly from fruits that contain fiber, is highlighted as superior to using isolated sweetener powders or drops, as fiber aids in slowing sugar absorption. Monitoring gut health is crucial. Individuals experiencing chronic bloating or digestive changes after 6 to 12 months of sweetener use should consider that their current sweetener, especially sugar alcohols like erythritol, may be causing these issues. The text also recommends avoiding synthetic sweeteners such as acelfam, K, and aspartame for long-term use, as natural alternatives like stevia and monk fruit generally present a cleaner safety profile. Among the best long-term sweetener choices, monk fruit is noted for its stability and antioxidant properties, while stevia is recognized as a safe botanical option, despite some users finding its aftertaste challenging. Allulose, a newer rare sugar, is also mentioned for its favorable metabolic behavior and lack of gastrointestinal distress compared to sugar alcohols. Ultimately, the overarching goal is to reduce reliance on sweeteners altogether, as lowering the overall sweetness baseline is deemed beneficial for long-term metabolic health. Post-meal drowsiness, often referred to as food coma or postprandial somnolence, is a common phenomenon influenced by various physiological. The activation of the parasympathetic nervous system during digestion diverts energy from the brain and muscles to the digestive tract, leading to feelings of relaxation and sluggishness. Additionally, meals high in carbohydrates or sugars trigger insulin spikes, which facilitate the absorption of amino acids while leaving tryptophan in the bloodstream. This tryptophan is converted into serotonin and subsequently melatonin in the brain, contributing to sleepiness. Another contributing factor is reactive hypoglycemia, where a rapid drop in blood sugar occurs after consuming refined sugars or white flour, typically 60 to 90 minutes post-meal, resulting in a sudden loss of energy. Furthermore, rising glucose levels can suppress orexin production, neuropeptides that promote wakefulness and alertness. Certain food types are particularly associated with post-meal drowsiness. Refined carbohydrates, heavy proteins like turkey and soy, large portion sizes, and high-fat meals can all exacerbate feelings of sleepiness due to their effects on insulin and digestion. To mitigate post-meal drowsiness, engaging in a brief walk of 10 to 15 minutes can help utilize glucose effectively and prevent insulin spikes. Balancing meals by combining carbohydrates with fiber, healthy fats, and proteins can slow sugar absorption and avoid the spike and crash cycle. Staying hydrated is also crucial, as dehydration can mimic fatigue. Lastly, individuals who are sleep deprived may experience a more pronounced dip in alertness after meals, highlighting the importance of adequate rest.